Well, we've come to Vancouver, British Columbia. Here we are, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by George Bowering, the great, eminent George Bowering. Thank you, George, for joining us.
He means old.
No, and Karis Shearer.
Hi.
We're here to talk about the title poem of this book by George, The World, I Guess. And the title poem's called The World, I Guess, as title poems tend to be. And I wonder if, George, you'll read it, and then we'll talk for 5 minutes about the poem.
I guess. This is really an introduction to the book as well. The world, I guess. If you don't write it down, the poem will go away, back to wherever it came from, maybe a dead person or Mars. Even if you're doing something else, like trying to have a bowel movement, as is often the case with me, not meaning to be vulgar or comical, but a planetoid is another possibility, if that's the right word. Think about all the poor mute Miltons who had something else to do. They could have changed the world, or at least the poetry world, or North America. But even if you write it down, here's the problem. You will be miswriting because you are misreading. You have to accept that if you want to spend a life at this job.
Karis, this is a poem about poetry and about writing. Where do we start if we want to read it as a meta poem? I mean, obviously the first line, but...
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a poem that is, it's thinking about the materiality of poetry. It's thinking about fixing the poem to the page and how we do that, or how you do that.
Specifically, how George does it. George, miswriting and misreading, what an interesting relationship.
Yeah, it's, I think that I take it as a truism philosophically, that whenever you read anything, you're making mistakes as you're reading it. So it's a misreading, right?
Right.
But that suggests a kind of a Platonic notion that there is a ideal reading
right.
that you don't want to miss. But anyway, forget about that stuff. But it also suggests to me, because reading and writing are the same thing, as I say in a recent book called Writing and Reading. No, it's called Reading and Writing. Anyway, that there's miswriting, that you're miswriting all the time too, that you're not writing.
The poems I love are poems that do what they say. And if you're talking about misreading and miswriting, what better a poem than the one that's not even sure if it's got the right word? I love that, if that's the right word. This poem is full of misreading and miswriting itself.
Good.
It's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
So, George, pick out a phrase or a line and tell us about it, something you think we should know about. What is this stuff about the poetry world or North America?
Yeah, well, let's see now. They could have changed the world. In other words, all these poor mute Miltons, right, who were too busy to write the poems, and there you go.
Right.
If they only had not been so busy, they could have done something important. But what they did was,
which is not poetry.
Yeah, they could have changed the world. And they say, well, okay, maybe not the world, but at least the poetry world. Oh, okay, maybe not the poetry world, but say North America, and then there's more and more. Like that will come down to what? Zero sum, right?
Right, nothing
eventually,
left.
Yeah.
Nothing left. Which is a funny way of saying poetry doesn't change the world. Ha ha.
Poetry makes nothing happen.
Poetry makes nothing happen. I wonder who said that. Karis, what do you make of, if you don't write it down, the poem will go away?
I guess it comes back to that idea of the need to fix the poem to the page somehow, even if it's always already going to be wrong. You know, it's always misreading and miswriting. So the poem's always flawed, but it still needs to be fixed somehow to the page, even so.
And George, where did it come from?
I don't know, because see, this suggests that a poem can exist before it's written.
Yes, it's some kind of,
if you don't write it down, it'll go away.
Platonic or Spicerian notion of the poems out there, and all you have to do is go to the crapper, and the poem, the poem will come to you, which you do a lot.
I want to make a poem out of real oranges, you know what I mean?
So how could a poem that's so puckish about itself and so willing to be dissolved by its own understanding of the inadequacies of writing and reading. How could that be the preface of a book?
Well, that's just giving you due warning, isn't it?
Yes.
That's to say, for all the reading, all the poems that are going to happen in here, if that's true, they're all miswritings. They're not the poems.
Yeah.
The poem came and you got it wrong.
Right.
I got it wrong. The whole thing is I got it wrong, including this thing about how I got it wrong.
And it, in some of the poems of this book, is life too, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
What about the world, I guess? So I would like to conclude by asking each of you to try to figure out what the title refers to. This would be the title of the poem or the title of the book. Karis, take the first shot. The world, comma, I guess.
I love this title. You know, in some ways it's about, you know, I guess is that kind of casual, like, disavowal of the seriousness of titling something "The World,"
Right.
but it's also guessing, right? It's guessing at the world and making it an attempt, even if it's a flawed one.
George?
Well, say I guess means in one level, I don't know. I'm not even warning you, I don't know, but I guess. Or it also, it's a kind of a phrase that's used by people who say they're posed with a question they don't want to answer. And they say, well, blah, 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 I guess. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a guessing game is what poetry is, if you could.
I guess.
But that's kind of slick.
Well, I mean, I think this poem does a lot of very sophisticated theoretical work about language and being and things, but it does it in the Bowering-esque language of more or less every day. Poems can do very complicated theoretical work.
And I think it's really important what the last word in this, like that's, like you got a job to do, right? Which has got nothing to do with the bowel movement. I never thought of that before.
Right, well, we'll leave that alone. But life at this job, and of course, it's not just writing, but miswriting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's your job.
Yeah.
I miswrite for work.
Yeah, yeah.
George, thank you so much. The poem is The World, I guess, and this is the book with its great cover with the fish. Karis Shearer, thank you.
Thank you, Al.
This has been great.
If you liked this episode, watch another and subscribe.
And join us for ModPo, a free and open course at modpo.org.